This is Tony Brewer from the We Talk Truth Group, and you're listening to Cogitations. And we're streaming on the Added to the Church of Christ X247 Facebook page and the We Talk Truth Group. If you want to be involved in the We Talk Truth Group, go to Facebook in your search engine, type in We Talk Truth, ask to join, and we'll let you in, and you can join in all of the discussion there. If you like to be a part of the Added to the Church of Christ X247 Facebook page, just go and like the page. It's a large page. We use it as a hub, and there's probably 26, almost 27,000 followers on it now. You can also, something I'm doing new, you can tweet at me. I'm on Twitter now, Cogitations at Near Churches. So just go and tweet me, Cogitations at nearchurches.com on Twitter. It's NEARCHURCHES, and you can be a Patreon or a patron at www.patreon.com/nearchurches. Cogitations. Hitherto is the end of the matters. For me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. And the idea, that's from Daniel 7:28, we're not going to keep the matter in our heart. We are going to talk about it. Now, the subject at hand is heaven. And I saw an interesting exchange between two people, or actually between more than two people, on the We Talk Truth Group. And it was about our eternal destination. All those vowels there together, that's hard to say. Our eternal destination. So where do we go when we die? I mean, that's a fair question. A lot of people are really scared about it. A lot of people have misconceptions. I know that the nomenclature is difficult sometimes because, I used to hear people say all the time, I want to go to heaven when I die, or good people go to heaven, bad people go to hell, stuff like that. And that's an okay general statement. I have no problem with the statement generally, but I think that it might be a little surface. It doesn't accurately represent exactly what the Bible teaches. And you can go to Luke. In fact, we can do this. You can go to the book of Luke here, chapter 16. Oh, that's John. That's not going to get us where we need, is it? All right. Luke 18, Luke 15, Luke 16. I'll read this account here. In my studied opinion, it's my conviction that Jesus is opening the veil or parting the veil a little bit about what happens in the beyond. Luke 16, and he said unto his disciples, there was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was, wait, wrong place. Hold on. That's the unjust steward. I am not, is it Luke 15? Nope, right here. I thought it started at the beginning of it starts in verse 19. There was a certain rich man which was clothed in purple and fine linen, and fared sumptuously every day. And there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, which was laid at his gate full of sores, and desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. And it came to pass that the beggar died, and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And in hell he lifted up his eyes, being in torment, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water, and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. But Abraham said, Son, remember that thou in this life, or thou in thy lifetime, receive thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. And besides all this, between us and you, there is a great gulf fixed, so that they which would pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that would come from thence. Then he said, I pray thee, therefore, Father, that thou wouldest send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brethren, that he may testify unto them, lest they also come into this place of torment. Abraham saith unto him, They have Moses and the prophets, let them hear them. And he said, Nay, Father Abraham, but if one went unto them from the dead, they will repent. And he said unto him, If they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. And then that's the end of the parable. So, and again, I know I just called it a parable, but it is parabolic, but that doesn't mean it's not a true account. So whether or not you take this as an actual true account of an actual rich man and Lazarus, or you take this as a parable as if the rich man and Lazarus are both fictitious characters created in the mind of Jesus to teach a lesson, you have to acknowledge that what Jesus said about the afterlife is true. Jesus never uses parables that don't follow along the lines of God's created universe and God's created realm of existence, God's created planes of existence, the spiritual realm and this realm all have rules, and parables follow along those rules. So if you consider this a parable, it's still true. It's still accurate. If you are like me and you consider this just a true story, then you still must understand this is still true. It's still accurate. So we have a glimpse, if you will, to the other side, that if you die in a state of righteousness, that we're going to go be comforted in paradise, Abraham's bosom. The thief on the cross, to which so many refer to try to refute water baptism, that thief was told by Jesus, today you'll be with me in paradise. Jesus went to paradise. Incidentally, if you'll go to Acts chapter 2, Peter quotes from the book of Psalms that about the Messiah, it was said, you will not suffer your Holy One to see corruption. You won't leave my soul in Sheol, or paradise. We know that Jesus considered the destination of his soul and the thief on the cross his soul, paradise, and the Hebrew word for that is Sheol. That's just the realm of the dead, and specifically paradise. So we understand there's two different sides to paradise. Those who die in righteousness, it's paradise. Those who die in unrighteousness, it's torment. Okay, that's the rich man. That's the place where you don't want to be. And then at the second coming of Jesus, those who are in paradise are going to receive a crown of glory. Well, now, what do you mean by the crown of glory? Well, obviously, he's talking about heaven. We're going to receive a crown of glory, a new body. When I say a new body, a body that's been made new, we're talking about the resurrection. Because you see, when we die, our spirit and our body separates. Our soul is in Sheol, either paradise or torment. Our body's in the earth, and our spirit is disembodied. And Tony, you might think, Tony, what are you talking about? I thought it was the spirit that went to the other realm. Well, your spirit is your pneuma. Your spirit is in the world still through how you've impacted the world. If I died right now, my spirit would still be in the world representatively through all of this material that I've put out in podcast and writing and live streams and stuff like that. Just like God's spirit is in the world through the words of the Bible that we have in our hands today. So understand what I mean by that. I'm not saying our ghost is running around. Our soul is in Sheol, our spirit is disembodied, and our body is in the ground, okay? On the day of resurrection, all three of those things are going to be brought back together, okay? Now, I'm going to see how many times I can say okay. Sometimes I bug me when I talk. Somebody might say, well, Tony, we go to heaven when we die because, and I'm not going to deal with refutation of each argument. There are many people who believe that we go to heaven when we die, that after AD 70 or after complete revelation was given, whatever, that changed after the destruction of Jerusalem or after other times. Let's just read some verses here. I've got 4 verses that we're going to look at this, that we're going to think about this from. Let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8. And I think it's very interesting that Paul says something that transcends the time in which he writes. Okay? It transcends the time in which he writes. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day. Now, what day is he talking about? Well, he's talking about the day of judgment. That's when we're going to receive our crown of righteousness. Nobody disputes that. But when's he going to get it? Oh, I'm glad you asked. He's going to give it to me at that day, and not to me only, or not when is he going to get it, but who else is going to get it? But unto all them also that love his appearing. Listen, all the people who love Jesus' appearing are going to receive a crown of righteousness on the day of judgment. You don't get your crown of righteousness before the day of judgment, period. Heaven is that crown of righteousness. Our bodies, resurrected bodies, where we can live in eternity with Jesus, is the crown of righteousness. All right? In fact, you can go to Hebrews chapter 2, and our bodies are considered a crown, but our crown of righteousness that we're going to reside in forever, that we're going to get that on the day of judgment. So if this were the only verse that we had, to me this would be enough. That on the day of judgment, I'm going to receive my crown of righteousness the same time Paul receives his crown of righteousness. Now, what that means is if Paul is in heaven right now, or think about somebody you know, if they passed away and they died in righteousness, if they're not in paradise, if you say they're in heaven, then they're in heaven and they have no crown of righteousness. Well, that doesn't even make any sense. All right, so let's go to 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 4. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, ye shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. Friend, what is that crown of glory? Do you think it's an actual crown sitting on top of your head? Do you think that's what the inspired writers understood that to be when they were writing? Listen, we're talking about our home in heaven, and this crown of glory, this crown of righteousness, it's a changed body. We're going to have such a righteous and changed body where we can live in this ethereal realm with Jesus and God forever. I mentioned a verse in Hebrews, and we need to go over there and read this, because I shouldn't have just mentioned it offhand and then not read it. All right, I'm going to look at chapter 2, starting in verse 1. Therefore we ought to give the more earnest heed to the things which we have heard, lest at any time we should let them slip. For if the word spoken by angels was steadfast, and every transgression and the disobedience received a just recompense of reward, how shall we escape if we neglect no so great a salvation, which at the first began to be spoken by the Lord, and was confirmed unto us by them that heard him? God also hearing them witness both with signs and wonders, and with divers miracles and gifts of the Holy Ghost, according to his own will. For unto the angels hath he not put in subjection the word to come, whereof we speak, by one in a certain place testifying, saying, What is man that thou art mindful of him? Or what is the son of man that thou visited him? Thou madest him a little lower than the angels. Now listen to it. Thou crownedest him with glory and honor, and didst set him over the works of thy hands. That's in reference to the body. That's in reference to Jesus receiving a body. Our bodies are a crown of glory. So if we already have a crown of glory, and then we're going to receive a crown of glory at the second coming, then the idea there is our bodies are going to be remade. All right? We're not talking about a crown that sits on top of our heads. We're talking about our bodies. Our bodies, the human body, is the crowning glory of God's creation. So I'm ready. This is incidentally, we're going to notice this in 1 Corinthians 15. In fact, we're going to go there let's go there now. 1 Corinthians 15. That's our next verse. 1 Corinthians 15. Let's start at verse 35. 1 Corinthians 15 is that great resurrection chapter. 1 Corinthians 15, starting at verse 35. But some man will say, How are the dead raised up, and with what body do they come? Thou fool, that which thou sowest is not quickened except it die. And that which thou sowest not that body that shall be, but bear again, it may chance of wheat or some other grain. But God giveth it a body as it hath pleased him, and to every seed his own body. All flesh is not the same flesh. There's one kind of flesh of the flesh of men, another flesh of the beast, another of fishes, and another of birds. There are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial, and the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is the other. There is one glory of the sun. Notice all the glory words. There's one glory of the sun, and one glory of the moon, and one glory of the stars, and one star differeth from another star in glory. So also is the resurrection of the dead. Listen to it now. It's sown in corruption, it's raised in incorruption. It's sown in honor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it's raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body, there is a spiritual body. And so it is written, the first man, Adam, was made a living soul, and the last Adam made a quickening spirit. So forth and so on. So forth and so on, rather. Well, do we understand that we're in this body of unrighteousness, and we're going to be raised in righteousness, okay? That doesn't mean that we have an inherent sinful nature. It's just this body's been tainted by sin. This body is decaying. This body is suffering from the consequences of Adam and Eve eating the fruit. But we're going to be raised at that day, and we're going to be given a new body, a spiritual body. Now, I don't know exactly what that means. It's going to have flesh and blood and all of that good stuff, but it's still going to be, it can be described as a crown, okay? A crown of righteousness, a crown of glory, so that we can live with Jesus and the Father forever. I don't understand the complexity of this. It sounds very simple. It should be very simple. Incidentally, if we say that people are in heaven, let's go to the book of James. James chapter 2. If we say that people are in heaven, then we've got a problem. We think that there's going to be disembodied souls running around heaven, or can a soul even quote unquote run around, or disembodied spirits run around? A spirit has to be given a body. A soul and a body and a spirit make up your identity. Without your soul, body, and spirit, you have no identity. James chapter 2, verse 26. For the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. James is not writing about the resurrection. James is not writing about Sheol, paradise, torment, or heaven. He's just citing a fact, an absolute understood fact, and he's making an a priori argument. We can reason that since we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the soul without the body is dead, or the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead, being alone. If we say that we go to heaven when we die, then we say that there are disembodied spirits in heaven. We say that we go to heaven before we're resurrected. What would be then the purpose of the resurrection? If I can enjoy an eternity in heaven without the resurrection, what would be the purpose in the resurrection? Why do I need to be reunited with the body? Why would my spirit need to be reunited with its body? Something to think about. All right, I'm going to get to the comments here and see if I can find any comments. We've got a lot of folks in the live stream. For that, I'm very thankful. I've been very humbled and impressed by the popularity and the widespread popularity of this podcast. let's see. We've got 3 comments in the We Talk Truth group. Good to see everybody. In 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 4, Paul is discussing a man being caught up into the third heaven. In verse 4, he calls this third heaven paradise. Revelation 2:7 states that the tree of life is in paradise, and Revelation 22, 2 and 14 shows us that the tree of life is in heaven. It was presented with this, and the one who mentioned this said that we will all go to heaven or hell, then all be called out of some collective location and be judged. Thought. I probably take a different view on. First off, I've studied this Greek term, and the word paradise, that where the tree of life is where God is in heaven. Of that there is no doubt. There are no people in that location right now. First off, in order to partake of the tree of life, in order to eat of it, you'd have to have a body. And we know that their body is still on earth because we're looking forward to a resurrection. Go and study those words, and it's a very interesting study. I've outlined a study about where do you go when you die. It turned into a pretty lengthy study, and I cut it back a lot, but it's in an outline form. 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 4. Let me look at something really quick. Search. Nope. Just get here. 2 Corinthians 12. All right. Let me get my Strong's number here. I want to look at this. It is not expedient for me, doubtless, to glory. I will come to the visions and revelations of the Lord. Oh, never mind. This paradise is not here. This third heaven, here's the way the Hebrews conceptualized these 3 heavens. And incidentally, if you ever read Tolkien's epic about Middle Earth, the Norse word that's Midgard. Okay, so the below, there's the first. I'm about to dump a whole lot of stuff. Let's back up. I'm excited, and I don't get stimulated like this often. Here's the way the Hebrews conceptualized these first, second, and third heaven. The first heaven is where we're sitting right now. The second heaven is like your atmosphere and outer space, atmosphere, whatever. And your third heaven, or your atmosphere, your third heaven is beyond that. Your third heaven would actually be the spiritual realm. Now, you've got to be careful whenever you're looking at this and the way they conceptualize the spiritual realm, because here's the thing. Paul said that whenever we die, the soul goes back to God from whence it came. Well, we know that nobody argues that at one time all souls went to paradise and no soul went to heaven. During the time in which Paul would have written that, all souls, according to all brethren who believe that we go to heaven or paradise, according to all brethren, they would have believed that Paul's talking about, or that all souls go back to God which gave it. During that time, all souls would have gone to paradise, which is Sheol, or which is Abraham's bosom. Well, that's just talking about the ethereal region. If you take the position that Paul is talking about heaven, then Paul is talking about something that doesn't happen during the time in which he wrote. Let me see if I can find that verse. Let's see. Nope, right here. Hopefully that'll bring it up. Nope, I got a verse. Paul wrote that, and I cannot remember where he wrote it. It could be in Philippians. Anyway, it doesn't matter, regardless of the fact that Paul, just read the writings of Paul, and you'll find that statement where Paul talks about the soul returns back to God who gave it. Well, during the time in which Paul wrote, nobody disagrees that all souls actually went to paradise. So you would actually affirm by that statement that all souls didn't go to paradise. You would be affirming that those souls that Paul's talking about went to heaven. Well, nobody would be prepared to say that. Here's what we can ascertain from the scriptures. Yes, even Jesus did not go to heaven when he died. It was after his resurrection that he ascended into heaven. Absolutely. That's another thing, everything about us emulates Jesus. We are following Jesus. We are going to, after our resurrection, go to heaven. But let me read this. Let me read this comment again. In 2 Corinthians 2:1-4, Paul is discussing a man being caught up into the third heaven. In verse 4, he calls this third heaven, paradise. Oh, I do need to go to verse 4. I should have. How that he was caught up into paradise. Let me see that word. Yes, paradisios. It's, let me read Thayer on this. Among the Persians, a grand enclosure or preserve, hunting ground, park, shady and well-watered, so on and so forth. A garden, a pleasure ground, a grove, or a park. The part of Hades, which was thought by the later Jews to be an abode of the souls of the pious until the resurrection, but some understand this to be a heavenly paradise. The upper region of the heavens, according to the early church fathers, the paradise in which our first parents dwelt before the fall, still exists, neither on earth nor in the heavens, but above and beyond the world. And then, of course, heaven. That's kind of shrouded in mystery. This term paradise, when you see how it's used throughout the Bible, but when I'm looking at Paul and his writings, if he's talking about going to where God is and he calls it paradise, well, at the time of the writing, there was still Sheol. There was still paradise and torment. And you still had Abraham's bosom. And the place where Jesus went after his resurrection is a different place than the place where Jesus went after his death. Does that make sense? Let me get this here. I'm trying to think of, I know a good one. Well, so yeah, Jesus is in the bosom of the Father. That's John 1:18. No man has seen the Father at any time, but he that is in the bosom of the Father. Well, I can't think of that citation where, so Matthew or John 14:1-6, Jesus said, neither pray I for thee, or, let not your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, and I go and prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, you may be also. And whither I go, you know, and the way you know. Well, where's he going? Where is he now? Well, he's now in heaven. Let me see if I can find that reference. All right. That's too many. I tell you what, let's look at John 3. That might be a good one. I want to see what words are used in John 3. John 3, verse 13. And no man hath ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven. All right. Now, we know that Jesus didn't come down from paradise. So from where did Jesus come down? He came down from where the Father is. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, the same that was in the beginning with God, and not anything that was made without the Word. Well, this I'm gonna just butcher this pronunciation of this Greek word for you, horanos, which is it's the vaulted expanse of the sky with all things visible in it, the universe, the world, the aerial heavens or the sky, the region where the clouds are and the tempests gather, and where thunder and lightning are produced, the sidereal or starry heavens, the region above the sidereal heavens, the seat of order of things eternal, consummately perfect, where God dwells in other heavenly things. This usually, whenever we're talking about heaven, the eternal destination, where God is, where Jesus is, where that tree of life is, that is eternal, and that is our destination ultimately. But what I'm looking at when I see paradise, when I'm seeing like the rich man and Lazarus, they went to a place that is not eternal. They went to a place that is more like a holding place where the souls go. And whenever the resurrection comes, then the souls are going to be reunited with the body. So the body, the spirit, the soul will be reunited. So this is a good verse here, John 3:13. We know that Jesus didn't come down from Abraham's bosom. He went up to heaven because that's the idea. Jesus went back up to a different place. So the thief is in paradise and Jesus is in heaven. Acts chapter 1, 9 through 12 talks about, let me go here, see if I want to see what word that Luke uses to describe this. And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight, and while he looked steadfastly toward heaven. It's interesting. They're looking steadfastly toward heaven. The same word is used, but this time it's just used to the sky and the universe. So it could be that the word paradise is an idiom or has become idiomatic by this time of anything in the ethereal region, and the word heaven is lofty and for the dwelling place of God and his throne and where Jesus is. And then also it's also used for the starry skies, the universe, stuff like that. Anyway, it's good stuff. Glad for that. Yes. So the terms third heaven and paradise in 2 Corinthians 12 are not in reference to heaven or Sheol. They were used as a general term in reference to the spiritual realm. It's very likely. And incidentally, there's another word to think about whenever you study this. And Ephesians, it's found in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 3, but it's found 5 times in the book of Ephesians. And it's this word heavenly, eporanos, which is this third heaven that, up in the sky and stuff. It's above the sky. It's celestial. It's heavenly. It's high. Existing eporanos is existing in heaven, things that take place in heaven, the heavenly regions, heaven itself, the abode of God and angels, the lower heavens of stars, the heavens of the clouds, the heavenly temple or sanctuary, or of heavenly origin or nature. You see how broad these words are, but that's 5 times you read this eporanos, and yes, I understand that I am butchering the pronunciation, I'm sure. But blessed be God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who hath blessed us with all spiritual blessings in the ethereal region. That's the idea. It's not in this region. In fact, if you'll go to Ephesians chapter 6 and look at I think it's verse 12. Yes, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in heavenly places, in high places, in the other realm. Not in this plane of existence, in the other plane of existence. That's what I mean. Whenever I say that Paul said that The soul goes back to heaven from whence to go, or rather goes back to God who gave it. It's just that the soul goes back to the other realm. Whenever we die, our soul leaves this plane of existence. Well, where does it go? Well, if we understand that it's not going to be until the day of judgment that we get our crown of glory and that we get to reside in heaven, which is our destination when we have our bodies. I mean, why do we have to have a remade body, 1 Corinthians 15, so we can live for eternity in heaven? Why do we have to have this crown of righteousness, this crown of glory? Why is it in 1 John chapter 3 that it says that when he shall appear, we shall be like him? Well, it's because we have to be changed so we can live in eternity with Jesus. Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not, beloved. Now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Well, that's Jesus coming. Now, everybody that has this hope in him purifieth himself, even as Jesus is pure. But the thing about it is, we're going to have this new body. And when I say a new body, again, it's a recreated body. It's resurrected and it's revamped, and no wheelchairs, no canes, nothing like that in heaven. But why do we need that? Because where we were before, we didn't need it, because that's Sheol. And where we're going, we do need it, because that's where Jesus is. And heaven was made for us. We're going to spend an eternity there. But yes, I think a lot of times whenever we try to be so literal and cut and dry, I think we've got to be careful. We got to understand that we're going to spend an eternity in heaven, and that's where we're going to be. Our mind, our soul, our spirit, and our body are going to be reunited, and we're going to be able to live there. Right now, those people in Sheol, their soul is there, but their spirit and their body is not. All right. So I guess the difference between paradise in 2 Corinthians 12 and Revelation 2:7 would be the fact that the tree, the fact that the tree of life is mentioned, which we know is, and you said where God is, as seen in Revelation 22, 2 and 14. Yes, and incidentally, let's see, Revelation 2:7. Let me get there. Revelation. This is another interesting, I found this to be interesting when I was doing this study. He that hath an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh, I will give paradise. All right, that word paradise is paradisios, and the paradise of God. And of course, that the midst of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. Well, so notice that of God is an adjectival prepositional phrase. There's a paradise, and then there's a paradise of God. So if I'm going to die and go to paradise, well, what paradise do you mean? Do you mean the paradise of God, or do you mean the paradise that we call Abraham's bosom? That's a logical response. And then 22, 2 and 14. Let me go there. Revelation 22. In the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there the tree which bare 12 manner of fruit, and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Then all the way down to verse 12, and behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. Yeah, this is, I'm going to tell you, I am totally rethinking my view on Revelation so as not to get into it on this podcast. I'll just tell you this. I don't think from Revelation 22 that we can be taking, that we need to take Revelation 22 and pull from it this deep theological, and make this deep theological doctrines and dogmas about heaven and Jesus' second coming. I'll just put it like that. I take a view of Revelation that is not taken by many brethren. So that's all I'll say here. But in 2:7, yes, I would say that the paradise of God is what we would normally refer to as heaven, like heaven, where, well, Revelation chapter 4, the picture of the throne room, the that's the paradise of God in question here. And the Sheol, torment and paradise sides, that's not where the throne room is. Now remember, there's a sense when you can back off and you can just talk about generically, heaven is in the spiritual realm. Paradise is, Sheol is in the spiritual realm. So you could say, well, the throne is in the spiritual realm. But again, we got to be careful with that, or we need to take care with that, because it would get confusion. I'm going to go to the live stream message thread in the added page, and thank you so much for those comments. It really livens up, or at least I hope it livens up the podcast, and maybe those of you listening to this podcast will let me know whether or not it livens it up and makes it more interesting to see. I'm going to get in here and see if I can find any comments. All right. Yeah, boy, we got a lot of, we may have more comments here than I can shake a stick at. All right. So, well, listen, there are so many comments here that I can't deal with them all. We'd be here for hours and hours. Thank you so much for all of these comments, by the way. I appreciate this greatly. Why don't you take some time to go? Oh, I have a YouTube channel, Cogitations podcast on YouTube. Won't you take some time to go and to subscribe to it? Take some time to like the page, add it to the Church of Christ, Acts 2:47, and take some time to go to podbean.com and subscribe to the podcast, or to Apple Podcast and subscribe to the Cogitations podcast. We would love you to do that. I know in the church they act as if there's no Hades to hear them talk of a relative that's passed and never was a Christian. Ooh, yeah, that's pretty rough. I wanted to see somebody talked about pets and stuff. Well, anyway, pets are not going to be in heaven because they don't have any spirits and souls. They're not made in the image of God. All right, good deal. Listen, I'm going to. Wow, that really blew up on the added page today. Thank you so much. We had so many people on the live stream. Thank you for that. The more we can be consistent, the more Facebook will promote our content. We've been on for about 45 minutes now, so I think it's time. I think we've exalted this. Listen, just on a surface, if anybody tells you that the place where the soul goes when it dies is heaven, then ask them if they think that Paul's received his crown of righteousness, because Paul's talking about heaven. 2 Timothy 4 verse 8, and then ask him about when that chief shepherd shall appear in 1 Peter 5:4, and then think about why we would need a resurrected body. 1 Corinthians 15:35. So anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate what you're doing here. I appreciate everything. That's so many people in the live stream. Go to Podbean, cogitations.podbean.com. Subscribe to this. Let's see how big we can make this. And if you would like to support what we're doing and help us out and make sure we keep doing content like this, www.patreon.com/nearchurches. And you can tweet at me, Cogitations at Near Churches. Cogitations at Near Churches on Twitter. So NEARCHURCHES. So Cogitations at Near Churches. We would love to have you tweet, show ideas, questions. Would love to get a good community going on Twitter where we could have a little corner of Twitter, kind of like a water cooler, and just talk about these things. Be good stuff. All right. God bless y'all. And we'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Cogitations podcast.